Your bones are dissolving. Your brain shifts upward. Your eyes change shape. And we're still planning a 9-month trip to Mars. Space doesn't just stress the human body, it heavies it. The question isn't if we can go. It's what kind of humans we become along the way. Welcome. Today we'll uncover how spaceflight reshapes the brain and body bone by bone, cell by cell, gene by gene, what it takes to reach Mars alive and come back human. All data you'll see is drawn from NASA, ESA, JAXA, and peer-reviewed research up to 2024. Let's dive in. Gravity shaped every system in your body. Remove it, and evolution's assumptions collapse. Fluids rush toward the head, your bones unload, muscles idle, the heart pumps easier and gets smaller. Your vestibular balance goes haywire, and even your cell's gene expression patterns shift to a new normal. This headward fluid shift raises pressure in the cranium and behind the eyes. Your vestibular system, tuned to Earth, misfires cue space motion sickness in most astronauts within 48 hours. Meanwhile, without weight on your skeleton, bone-building cells nap while bone-dissolving cells clock in overtime. The body adapts, just not in ways we want for a return to 1G or a landing on Mars. Weight-bearing, bones the hips, spine, and femur nucleus density incredibly fast in microgravity, typically 1 to 2% per month without aggressive countermeasures. Biochemical markers of bone breakdown spike within just a few days of reaching orbit. Long-duration missions on the International Space Station show partial recovery after return, but not always to baseline. Some astronauts retain measurable deficits in bone density a year later. Think of it as osteoporosis, but that fragility raises the risk of fractures on Mars, where even a simple trip could be a disaster, and after a hard re-entry to Earth. Countering that requires targeted loading, nutrition, and sometimes medications. And there's a downstream effect of this bone loss. When bone dissolves, all that calcium has to go somewhere. It floods the bloodstream and filters into the urine, dramatically boosting the risk of forming kidney stones. In the middle of a deep space mission, a kidney stone isn't just painful, it's a mission threat. To combat this, NASA uses strict hydration protocols and provides potassium citrate to help reduce stone formation. Monitoring urinary calcium is now a standard procedure. The lesson is clear. Stopping bone loss isn't just about the skeleton. It also protects the kidneys. Now, let's talk about muscle. The anti-gravity muscles, your calves, quads, and spinal extensors are the first to go. They atrophy fast. On top of that, your slow-twitch endurance fibers can actually shift their characteristics. Without a load to push against, strength and power bleed away. Even with 2 or more hours a day of intense exercise using the advanced resistive exercise device, a treadmill with a harness, and a stationary cycle, astronauts still return deep. We see measurable losses in strength and muscle volume over weeks and months, with even more pronounced deficits if the protocols aren't followed strictly. On Mars, the gravity is only 38% of Earth's, which isn't enough to fully retrain those muscles. That's why high-intensity, heavy-load exercise and maybe even clever suits that add resistance are absolutely The heart and blood vessels are also in for a ride. With less effort needed to push blood in microgravity, the heart remodels itself. Studies show the heart can become more spherical and even reduce its mass modestly over long-duration missions. When astronauts return to Earth, they often experience orthostatic intolerance. That means standing up can trigger dizziness or even fainting because the cardiovascular system has added in stiffer arteries in some cases and changes to how the body regulates fluids, and re-entry day becomes a serious cardiovascular stress test. On Earth, gravity pulls blood down into your legs. In space, that fluid shifts up to the chest and head, leading to the classic puffy face and skinny chicken legs look. The jugular veins in the neck distend, and in rare but serious cases, blood clots have formed. To counteract this, engineers have developed devices like lower body negative pressure, or LBNP. Think of them as vacuum pants that pull fluid back down to the legs. This is a promising tool for Mars missions to help protect brain and eye health from the constant headward fluid pressure. That fluid pressure has consequences for the brain itself. MRI studies show the brain can physically shift upward by a few millimeters in microgravity. We also see changes in white matter tracts, and the space is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Some of these alterations persist for months or even years after returning to Earth. The likely driver is that combination of the headward fluid shift and changes in how cerebrospinal fluids functionally. Many astronauts are fine, but the subtle effects on attention, balance, and fine motor tasks are being studied intensively, especially when you consider the combined effect of microgravity and deep space radiation. One of the most concerning health risks is what happens to vision. More than half of long-duration astronauts develop a set of eye changes, now grouped as spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, or SANS. The hallmarks include swelling of the optic disc, a flattening of the back of the eyeball, folds in the choroid layer, and shifts in vision toward farsightedness. The cause likely involves a combination of that headward fluid pressure, venous congestion behind the eye, and mild increases in intracranial pressure. Finding countermeasures is a top priority. Researchers are studying LBNP, special sleep positions, better CO2 control, and tailored exercise routines to protect astronauts' eyesight on the long journey to Mars. Of course, the biggest threat in deep space is the invisible one: radiation. Earth's magnetosphere is a fantastic shield. Outside of it, astronauts are bombarded by galactic cosmic rays and unpredictable solar particle events. The RAD instrument on the Curiosity rover measured about 1.8 millisieverts per day during its cruise to Mars and around 0.6 to 0.7 on the surface. For context, the average person on Earth gets about 2 to 3 millisieverts per year. A full Mars mission could expose the crew to somewhere between 0.6 to 1.2 sieverts cumulatively, depending on the ship's shielding and solar activity. That's within but pushes right up against the current lifetime radiation limits set by many space agencies. This radiation does real damage. It can shatter DNA, causing single and double-strand breaks, chromosomal inversions, and deletion. Our cells are amazing at repair, but they aren't perfect. The heavy ions found in deep space are particularly worrying because they may affect the central nervous system differently than the XAIs we're more familiar with. Animal studies have shown slowed cognition and changes to the human evidence is limited, but it's a major concern. Every bit of exposure inches up the lifetime cancer risk, which is why agencies cap the allowable risk and personalize those limits based on an astronaut's age and sex. The immune system also gets rewired. Spaceflight perturbs our natural defenses. T-cell activation can be blunted. The innate immune system shifts its responses, and dormant viruses like herpes have been found to reactivate in over half of the astronauts studied. Wounds may also heal slower. It's not just us. Either microbes behave differently. Some have shown increased virulence or a greater ability to form biofilms in microgravity. Keeping the crew healthy relies on strict hygiene, targeted vaccines, stress control, and constant monitoring. Then there's the challenge of daily life. The ISS orbits Earth every 90 minutes, meaning astronauts see 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. Even with carefully controlled lighting, sleep averages only about 6 hours, and the quality can be poor. On top of that, the CO2 levels in the cabin are elevated compared to Earth. This can trigger headaches and subtly impair cognition. In an environment where a simple mistake can be catastrophic, sleep and CO2 control are mission multipliers. Better sleep equals better judgment. And we can't forget the trillions of passengers we take with us. Our gut microbiome. Studies of astronauts show that the gut community shifts in space. There are changes in diversity and a tilt away from some beneficial species. This can have knock-on effects for digestion, immunity, and even mood through the gut-brain axis. A diet rich in fiber, fermented foods, and possibly probiotics and prebiotics may help stabilize this vital ecosystem on long missions. NASA's groundbreaking twin study and the many omics studies that followed gave us an unprecedented look at how spaceflight affects us at a molecular level. It toggles thousands of genes linked to immune function, DNA repair, circadian clocks, and our cellular power plants. The mitochondria. About 7% of one astronaut's genes showed long-lasting shifts in their expression patterns after his year in space. These aren't DNA mutations, but rather differences in how genes are regulated. A common thread throughout these studies is mitochondrial function. Space really stresses our energy systems. Another fascinating discovery was what happened to telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of our chromosome. Paradoxically, telomeres actually lengthen during long flights in some astronauts, then rapidly shorten to below their pre-flight baseline after landing before trending back toward normal. The pattern suggests complex stress responses rather than a simple story of aging faster. Meanwhile, markers of oxidative stress do rise, and some physiological systems look older while others adapt in different ways. So, let's picture the Mars mission reality. It's a 6 to 9 month transit, followed by about 500 days on the Martian surface, and then the long ride home. There are no quick evacuations. The partial gravity on Mars, at 38% of Earth's, will help, but it won't completely fix the bone, muscle, or vision issues. Radiation exposure will vary with solar cycles, and a major solar storm could force the crew into a cramped storm shelter for days. Food must remain nutritious for years. The crew has to be able to self-diagnose, self-treat, and maintain morale in an unforgiving desert with pink skies. This brings us to one of the biggest unknowns: human reproduction. We know radiation damages germ cells, permanent eggs. We suspect that microgravity may impair gamete function and fetal development. To date, no mammal has ever been conceived and born in space. For any kind of long-term presence on Mars or beyond, understanding and safeguarding reproduction is essential, and it's an ethically complex challenge. But we are not helpless. We have countermeasures. Today's exercise regimen is intense. To 2.5 hours daily using the arid for heavy resistance, a treadmill with a harness to simulate weight, and a cycle. The next generation of tools will be even better. Think short radius centrifuges for short bursts of artificial gravity, wearable resistance suits for passive exercise, and smart protocols that emphasize bone loading, multi-joint moves, and power training. Integrating LBNP with cardio workouts may help reduce those headward fluid shifts while preserving leg capacity. The goal is to trick the body into thinking gravity still matters. Beyond exercise, there are medical and nutritional strategies. 4 bone loss bisphosphonate drugs have shown promise when paired with exercise. For kidney stone risk, potassium citrate is effective. Nutrition will be optimized with vitamin D and calcium for bone health, plus high protein, omega-3s, and fiber. Sleep can be managed with melatonin and sophisticated circadian lighting. For the immune system, the focus is on stress mitigation, vaccines, and possibly targeted probiotics. Critically, all of these interventions must be personalized because every crew member will have a different risk profile and response. We also have engineering solutions. Water and polyethylene-based materials are surprisingly effective radiation shields. Pound for pound, spacecraft designers can route water tanks and supplies around crew quarters and include a heavily shielded storm shelter for solar events. For the long transit, habitats might use partial artificial gravity created by rotation to counter the fluid shifts and musculoskeletal losses, even if it's just for a short dose each day. Once on Mars, burying habitats or piling regolith on top of them can cut radiation exposure significantly. All of this informs who we send. Future crews won't just be pilots and engineers, they'll be physiologically resilient. Genetics may one day inform risk assessment, but selection must respect ethics. Do we accept long-term health trade-offs for the sake of exploration? Do we consider enhancing humans with gene therapies? What level of risk is acceptable? Transparent, informed consent, and strong international standards are critical as we plan for longer and more distant missions. And what about coming home? Landing day is hard. Astronauts expect weakness, dizziness, and weeks to months of rehabilitation. Bone density can take years to rebound and sometimes never fully does. Some of the brain and eye changes can persist. The psychological readaptation is real, too, getting used to noise, crowds, and the constant pull of gravity. Every long-term follow-up study teaches us more about how to keep the next cruise healthier. This all matters right now. With heavy-lift rockets like Starship testing today and lunar missions returning this decade, the planning for Mars is accelerating window by window. Researchers are building better radiation forecasts, designing artificial gravity concepts, and developing medical autonomy systems. Every expedition on the ISS, every analog mission in remote locations on Earth, adds crucial data to protect the first Martian cruise. The clock is ticking and so is our progress. Space will change us, our bones, our brains, our genes, and our hearts. But adaptation is humanity's superpower. We will engineer better habitats, smarter countermeasures, and healthier explorers. The real question isn't whether we can go, it's what kind of humans we'll become when we do. The next chapter of our evolution is being written among the stars. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, consider subscribing for more.